if somebody, shows something that then they ask us to edit it out, we've got a little bit of control. So if you're using an AI note taker, I can see there's two on at the moment. If you could switch them off, that would be helpful. The other thing is that we want people to be attending the meetings, not sending a bot in to record it all for them. Because the key thing for this is engagement. Is everybody okay with that?
Yep, no problems.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bronwyn. Yeah, I understand the efficiency of doing it, but we've had a couple of people being then a little bit guarded about what they say because it's not something that we can cover, if that makes sense. And if you weren't aware, like I say, we record every meeting and we do a transcript from that as well, so that you've got the best of, I think a pretty good job, as it were. Good. Well, thanks to everybody for joining. The reason we've set this up is that we've had quite a few comments or conversations in the last couple of weeks with people that are delivering schools. They're either doing new build schools, or there's a lot of work going on at the moment doing retrofits, putting solar panels in, and also doing other types of improvements to schools. And with all of that investment, that's generating more and more new asset information that needs to be captured. The challenge, to some extent, is that at the schools level, there's often not the technical expertise, especially in a standard school, to be able to take a lot of the information that's being handed over. And the other aspect of that is that the information that is being procured by certainly the department is very detailed, and a lot of the information is really still design information when we actually look at it. So as far as Pivot Asset Management's concerned, our perspective is on the asset management side of things. And what we want to try and do is avoid asset teams being overloaded with a lot of information that they don't need, and also then they can't audit it or check it. And if people are producing information and then there's nobody checking it at the other end, then there's all sorts of opportunities for things to go wrong. So before I want to talk through some of the methods that are being used at the moment to deliver schools. And I don't know how many people on the call are involved in that. I know most of the people here. Lewis, I don't think I know you. Could you explain what you do?
Oh, hi, George. Yes, so I'm an information manager at Bimbox. So we review the model files against the client's EIRs. So essentially what the DFE are looking for within their models. We check that information is compliant and present.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I know you're part of the space group, aren't you? Or the Space Zero, is it?
Yes. Yeah. We work very closely with Wayne and Space Zero.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you do a lot of schools, don't you? Or, well, certainly they do a lot of schools.
Yeah, so I'd say between 40 and 50% of the works we get in are new build schools. We get a couple of the refurbs and retrofits, but it's mostly the new builds.
And am I right that certainly I've forgotten your name, Wayne. Wayne is.
Yeah, so there's
Wayne's
our CEO, and we've got Chris Crooks as our managing director.
Yeah, I knew Wayne. We worked with Wayne as Active Plan on the Building Schools for the Future program. That was largely FF&E. Is that still the case, or are you doing a lot more than that now?
Yeah, so Space Zero, they specialise in the FFE design, pulling together the layouts for that and getting that data in. We're across the board, any type of data. So we essentially work on the lead appointed party side, the client side. So we'll work with the lead contractors to make sure that the project is getting delivered as per what the DFE is looking for, and just check that the information that the contractors are receiving is as compliant as possible, providing that additional tech support to make sure that it's developed in line with the programme.
So who would you normally be working for?
We work mostly with the likes of Morgan Sindall, Tilbury Douglas, Galliford Try, Bowmer and Kirkland, the lead contractors on those projects.
Yeah, so they engage you as the information manager for the project.
Yes, they'll engage us from usually REBA 3 right through till REBA 5, REBA 6 handover, just making sure that everything's going in perfectly and as easy as possible for that handover process.
Okay, well that's really helpful. That's really helpful. Is there anybody else involved in delivering schools on the call at the moment? I'm just leaving it for a second there.
Yeah, not currently, but we have been in the past and we're looking for the future. So yeah.
Okay, that's you, Bronwyn, is it? Yeah. Good. Okay. Mo, I imagine that you.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I was going to say less delivering, but the software is being used on all our schools. I think like schools and prisons for us are probably the two biggest like sectors.
Yeah.
And we're involved on a range of sides. So we're involved on some of the consultants and the client representatives use us. Some of the tier ones and design firms use us, and then some supply chain members use us as well. So we're seeing it from all angles effectively.
Yeah. So you're providing. Do you want to just explain briefly what Morta does?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so good to be with everyone. Morta effectively replaces spreadsheets and documents with connected information hubs that can be configured to meet specific processes. So many companies use us for things like specifying information requirements, information delivery planning, tracking that against systems like Viewpoint, ACC, AConnex, and so on and so forth. Some are using us to create things like O&M manuals, health and safety files, collect COBie data and assure COBie data. So it's just a range of information management processes, as well as many other trackers within the industry.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so what we're trying to do within BIM and asset management is bring together companies like like Morta, with other a range of different software solutions, so that we can deliver far more coordinated information. I wear two hats. I think most of you know I run ActivePlan as well, which is in some ways we're doing some of the things that Mo's doing, but we focus really on the asset management side of things. So we see that what Mo is doing and what a lot of other software companies do in terms of, for example, inspection software, we see that as being complementary. So what we're doing is really bringing together the best of breed applications to be able to deliver the right sort of outcomes. And that might be something, Lewis, that we talk about at some stage. Eleanor, where are you from?
Hello.
Oh, you're from Waits.
Yeah, I'm from Waits. I'm not currently working in schools projects, but I believe I will be working in the future. I just wanna see. I know it has a bigger requirement in terms of being deliverables, and just wanna see. I know Mo very well, and yeah, at the moment I'm working in commercial projects as a digital construction manager.
Okay, so thank you. So what we're finding is that people are the supply chain, so there's two elements to this. Existing schools, and obviously there's thousands of them. I think there's certainly just in it might just be in England, there's 25,000. And so that's obviously it's a substantial range of schools. So existing schools is something that we're very interested in. I see Andrew's just joined us from B&K, which is good. So we've got a wide range of requirements for existing buildings, and obviously Lewis and Eleanor will be involved in delivering presumably new schools and maybe new projects in existing schools and things like that. So that's more of a standard BIM process, whereas what we're doing with existing schools is using methods of data capture using Scan2. I'm not going to call it Scan2BIM, actually. We're because it's not BIM. When you scan and create a 3D model, that's not BIM, I would say. So you're scanning to create a 3D model, and then we can enhance that 3D model using 360 photography to hold what those things are. And therefore we end up with something that I would argue is a BIM model, because you've then got real data to work with. Andrew, you've just joined us. Could you just, because to some extent, the reason we've sparked this off was a conversation we had with David Simpson from Associated Architects, and also you, about what's being handed over. And I think you said yesterday that you've had you've been able to make some progress with getting a bit of a rationalized feedback from the department and from schools, presumably, about what you're handing over. Would you mind just explaining that for a moment? I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. The one I was talking about yesterday actually wasn't a school project; it was a government project, but not a school project.
Right.
So it's as you know, as you're probably all aware, it's going through the current framework for 25, and it should be coming out this year. I know our group team or higher level team who are involved in looking at what the significant changes are, but from what I hear is there's a few areas haven't changed that we wish to be changed, but I don't know the detail at the minute, I'm afraid.
Okay. Well, we've been doing some. We as in Active Plan, we've done probably 15, 20 schools and colleges over this last couple of years, and I've asked Andrew Handley, who leads our work in that area, to come in just to give his practical experience of what is being achieved there. On some of them, they are PFIs. So we've got the benefit of working closely with the FM contractor that's going to receive the schools. So therefore, there's quite some glued together information there, and we've also got ones that are not for PFI. They're normal, handed over to the government, the department in that case, and then we're then doing what I think everybody does, is tries to engage with the school to get them to keep it up to date. I don't know, Lewis, are you finding with your work with BIMBox whether the schools are actually using the information that you're handing over? How are they using it? Are they keeping it up to date? If you've delivered projects a couple of years ago, are they implementing it?
So I'd say on the previous framework, the information wasn't used quite as much as we're seeing now. We're seeing a lot of engagement from the teams on each of the projects, and what data they want, what information they're going to be using that for. But we aren't seeing if they're updating that, if they're maintaining it, they're moving forwards, and we're not seeing what platforms they're actually pushing that into. So at the moment, it is very much us pushing data in the blind at the moment. We don't know where that's going, what it's being used for.
Okay. What I'll do, if I may, is I'll take out would it be useful if I show you the sorts of things that we've been doing? Would that help?
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Take me a moment just to set this up. I should have been ready. Okay. So we're taking a sort of a standard methodology of 19650 process, but what we do, we hold all of the non-geometric data in databases or in SQL in the cloud, and we use that to create a set of asset information requirements, which is machine readable. So rather than it being a series of documents that people can simply read or ignore, what we do is put it into a database environment, which can also connect to other applications. And that's one of the areas, Mo, that I want to talk to you about, because that's an area that you're very strong in. But we've got a strong application for being able to do that. And we've got a product library application, which manufacturers' product data is then put into. And that's a free product library that has been used now on probably over 100 projects. So we've got the product information that's been added by the project teams. And the process that we're operating is that when a product is selected, it's put into the product library. And I must emphasize that we're not charging manufacturers for that. We've got tools that allow us to connect in with Revit and AutoCAD. So when people are actually designing and building the information, they can be connected directly to the data, so that it means that whatever information has been set out by the DFE or the client is then connected directly, so they can actually see whether it's been done properly. It then will produce a digital O&M, because we know where everything is, we know what the product was, and we know what information was required. So that glues that together, and that will then provide an asset information model going forward. So this is an example that you might have seen this morning, but it's worth just showing again. This is this is actually a university, but it's the same principle, where this model was created by CISC, and what we've done is made it so that all the objects, the data, the non-geometric data, is held in the database. So because it's held in a database rather than in the models themselves, it means it's much easier to audit and validate. And it also means it's much easier for us to connect with other applications. We've then got this here, which is actually then connecting back to the manufacturer's product data. So that Grundfos pump, for example, may be used in a school or a college or a hospital or an office or whatever. But this is really one of the key breakthroughs that we've had over the last couple of years, and that's that we're not reliant on the models themselves being 100% finished, because on schools that often doesn't get done. What we're doing is we're able to use 360 photographs, and the 360 photographs complement what's in the model, but they obviously, because they are there, it's a true as built. And the unique thing that we're able to do is the asset data that was in the model that's been written to the database, the COBie data, we can then connect to the 360 photo. So we've got a three-way connection between the model, the database, and the 360, which means that the intelligence is there. We're creating smart 360s. that also means that that can then be used to audit what's being handed over. So in this case, we've got the classroom, and in the classroom, we've got the asset data, all the equipment that's been provided from whatever source. It doesn't have to be modeled. It can be coming through from schedules, but it's all classified as well. So I think that's a really important point. And then we're then able to, the FM is then able to use that to go and check that what they're being told has been delivered, has actually been delivered, and they can just check it off against what they can see in the 360. So when they click on that in the 360, you'll see in a second it turns green. So that's really the sort of process that we're operating. And then this one here shows how that can be done using a whole estate. This was an interesting one. It was done for the Scottish Futures, and it was for an estate, but it was a particular building that was built. But seeing it in the context of the whole estate, where they can have documents against individual properties, because in many cases the requirements in our experience of the local team are fairly basic. They're looking really at asbestos registers, statutory compliance, which contractors are down to do which work, a simple help desk that they can use, because often they don't have the money to put a proper CAFM system in place. What they really need to know is what things are, where they are, and then to be able then to interact with that in a simple way to see, for example, where all the compartment walls are, or to find individual assets. So to be able to use the information that is coming through, both to see things actually in the model, or alternatively to be able to see them in a simple interactive plan. And the 360s sort of bridge the gap. This was done 4 or 5 years ago, so it's relatively old. And the important thing to recognize, I mean, you guys will all know, there's probably 15 or so, 20 models that go to make this up, and each of them has got its own data. But what we're doing here, we're connecting it up. We can test it against the information requirements to see whether everything that was requested has actually been provided. But we can also then connect to it things that are in the O&M, so that you can then, in this particular one, you might have a 20-page O&M manual. So being able to tie back to the right page in the O&M manual for a particular asset or system, it just makes it a lot easier for people to navigate. So that's broadly the sorts of things. And I'm going to stop there and just open up to ask for people to ask questions, and then I'd like Andrew to just talk about how we're doing it on some live jobs with a couple of tier one, or a couple of contractors in Ireland. Are there any points or questions or observations on what I've just shown? Helena.
I have a question. I found very interesting that you say you start with a database and after that you add it to the model, because I understand the process and that can be probably a game changer in the maintainable assets, and how to manage the existing assets, and instead than doing the other way around, as you say, with the CCC scan, obtain the data and retrofit back to the FN2. So could you explain the process of?
Yeah, Andrew can do that in a moment, but I'll
Okay.
I'll just initially say that what we're doing, the key thing is that we're starting with a master asset library, and that master asset library is of asset types, and those asset types could be going into any building. So that master asset type library also has, we've got a master space library, a master library for systems, and therefore that sort of information can all be connected up before anybody's designed the building. So when the building is then being designed, you're then able to pick from that those libraries, which will tell you the information that is required. And again, that may have been created all within ActivePlan, or it could have been created in Mo's mortar system. And we're agnostic on that. The key thing is making it easy to do. But the principle is to try and organize as much of this as possible before you start designing. And therefore, you've got a degree of consistency across all the buildings. So, for example, on the ones that we're doing at the moment in Ireland, wherever possible, we're trying to keep the same information sets and the same asset type references for things, so that at a base level, they can all be connected back from an FM perspective. Whereas if on each project, which typically happens now, people call things differently, they may name them slightly differently, then that becomes quite difficult across a whole portfolio. It becomes very manual. Just the final thing is that what we've done, Eleanor, is made it so that that database is connected directly into the models. So we're an Autodesk developer. So we built APIs or add-ins for Revit and AutoCAD to be able to make those connections back to the intelligent asset data, which means that it can then be fully audited. I mean,
Thank you very much. Very interesting.
I'll say one final, sorry, I keep going on, but we've been involved in schools for almost 20 years. In fact, actually for 20 years. Before, during the Building Schools for the Future, we were dealing with Lewis's colleagues back in many years ago. And we were commissioned by the Department for Education to produce the original asset information requirements. And we worked with Beach Williamson and the team at DFE to produce a database-driven platform that was actually used on almost 200 schools. The intention with that was to create really good asset information that could then be used to run the schools. But what then happened, the coalition government ran out of money, and all of the projects that were supposed to be PFIs or PPPs actually became design and build. And we didn't have a client. There was nobody to hand the information over to. And the government was really focused at just delivering as many schools as possible. So a lot of the governance or the structure that we put in place to make all that happen was a bit lost. But we've still got that expertise. We spent a lot of time learning about what was needed in schools. So we've certainly got something to be able to contribute here with a lot of the other people in the room. So that's what we want to try and do.
Thank you.
Any other comments from anybody before we move on?
I think the main issue or the challenges I find is when you come to the universities and what have you. That's when it's different. I mean, I don't know. We've got guys in here from, is it BIMBox as well? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just it. Yeah. So sometimes we have the technical assistants who work on behalf of the DFE. It's the challenges we have is like it's not standardized across how they are measuring how the models are, if they're going to pass or not, basically, put in layman terms. So
Yeah,
we get a mixed message of different. We get mixed messages, don't we, Lewis?
Yeah, depending on what TAs you have, what contract you're working with, and what end user you've got, the requirements are different. They're checking it in different ways, and even the KPIs that you need to get through to the next stage, they differ depending on who's checking it.
Is
Yeah,
that on schools, Lewis, that you're talking, or was that universities?
That's
schools,
primary, secondary, and colleges that are running
technical
on.
colleges as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's been our experience as well. So I think you're absolutely right. If we can get a degree of standardization in terms of how things are going to be checked and audited, then that would be immensely helpful. One of the things that I don't know if some people on this call will be aware of the work that we're doing within BIM and asset management around Regulation 38 and fire safety. But what we're trying to do there is to get a standardized way of checking Regulation 38 compliance, because this is a legal and statutory duty that everybody that's involved should be doing properly. And if they sign off a declaration to say that they've got all the information, they legally have to sign off a declaration to say that they've got everything they need to keep that building safe from a fire perspective. But almost nobody has got the information that they need. That's been our experience. And it's going to really start biting people. So what we're trying to do is to, within the community, have subject matter experts who can say what's important, what isn't, so that, again, looking, at the DFE requirements, Andrew, rather than maybe zoning in on a particular attribute that's not been provided or something like that, we need to be able to step back and say what's important. Yeah, and it's difficult for you as Birmingham Kirkland or Waits to say, go back to the government and say, or the department say, well, we don't actually think you need this. The fact that you've had a consultant tell you that you need it, we don't think you need it. You can't really easily say that. But as a collective of people that are delivering schools, that's coming from somebody that, from an organization like BIM and asset management, which is neutral, we can push back, can't we? So that was the idea. Anna.
Hi, apologies, I joined a bit late. From our experience, both in schools, and I know we were talking about other sectors this morning as well, the less the client is competent or experienced, the more data they seem to require. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the classic is basically first-time clients who are managing an estate or even just one building or whatever will ask for absolutely everything, and social landlords are terrible, schools are terrible. Some universities are doing a lot of work to try and understand what they actually need. University of East England is brilliant, for example, brilliant case study, and they'll be spending a lot of time and a lot of effort to systemize their estate. But generally, clients who are only doing one-off building or have only just started on this journey will ask for absolutely everything, and absolutely everything is just a pond of data that they later don't do almost anything with. So I totally agree, George, with you. I think really where our expertise will be mostly useful is unpicking all of that and saying to the client, look, guys, really you need a good set of plans, a good set of scans, and then a basic set of maintainable assets that you really need to maintain, and start from that, then fill in the gaps. Don't try and hit everything in the first moment, because actually really it just becomes data for the sake of data. I'm sure I'm saying everything that people already know, but I think schools are no different, basically.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Anna. That's perfect, actually. I'd like to hand over to Andrew because what you said there feeds perfectly in with Andrew's ethos of basically going from the term he uses all the time is baby steps.
I stopped using that ages ago.
Yeah.
That's 5 years ago. We've moved on from baby steps, thankfully. We've all grown up a bit.
Toddler steps now.
Anna's entirely right. It's one of my favourite cultural references that you ask, what do you want? And it's like the end scene from the film Leon. Send everyone. It's like literally, that's the answer you normally get is, I just want everything because I don't want to have to think necessarily. That is the biggest challenge, is engaging to say to people, we need to talk. We need to have a conversation about what you want. So yeah, I've got to try and follow all the wonderful things that George has said. So I'm going to share my screen because I don't have the luxury of videos. I'm going to do this live. So George described many different parts. We're going to focus on the workflow, the steps through the asset information requirements, how that links into the project information model, and we maybe look at the product library as well. As George has already said, examples we're going to use are Irish education. So one is a school which was a framework agreement, so fairly traditional contract. So if we were relating that to here, it may be JCT, maybe NEC, maybe DMB, but it wasn't under a PFI agreement. And the other is a university, excuse me, which as I understand it is PFI sort of style. I think they call it George, I've forgotten the expression. PPP. Yeah. Special purpose vehicle as well. Yeah. So the first school we're going to look at is the Edmund Rice College, Carpenterstown. I find there's a lot of places in Ireland is you've got names that reflect what perhaps was done there at one point. We're actually working on a project at the moment that is called, the place is called Presentation, which caused huge confusion early days. Can we talk about presentation? Which one? No, the play. Very confusing. So what we do, or what was done on this project, is saying to the Education Authority, what do you require? And that's broken down, as everyone's probably familiar, from standard BIM methodology into the constituent worksheets within COBie as a framework, as a schema. So you have the facility, the contact, floors, spaces, asset types. Asset types is where people tend to focus. George did mention we can have libraries for spaces, floors. The reality is most people, let's just check this one, just set a default because their requirements for a space are the same regardless of what the space might actually be. We tend to find in hospitals, biomedical facilities, yes, you might get into particular requirements for a very particular space. So you have a laminar flow lab, special suppression maybe, but something like a school, the spaces are all the same. So the contractor reflected back to the client, here's a list of what is going to be in the building from what we know from the design, and said, these are the requirements. The client said, okay, didn't get any feedback, so we went with that. So we have different asset types, CO2 sensors, CCTV, and then we can see we have all the required fields. We have the classifications, hopefully in every case. And this, in this kind of project, is what ties it all together, is actually the classification. It allows, when the project has been done, that those classifications are followed, so the requirements and the information can be linked together to test, have you delivered what was actually required? At least that's the principle. So let's look at one of George's favorites, boilers. I think he, like me with baby steps, has moved on from boilers. So almost more importantly, it shows people what isn't required. We don't need to know the color of the boiler. We don't need to know the shape of it. Respect what Anna was saying. Let's focus on the really important things. So don't just say, I want everything. Tell us the things you really do need. And this was the contractor helping the client by saying, look, this is what we believe you actually need. And this would be a big step forward. But that extends into the likes of, I just spotted it and I've lost it, the coordinates. So what we're seeing here is the asset requirements in terms of type, component. It's all of them. They're grouped together here. because we discovered over time this was an easier way to engage with clients, was to say, these are your asset requirements. It became a blocker. We said, what do you want to know about the type? What do you want to know about the component? We spent too much time trying to explain the difference between a type and an instance, and we were getting lost in language that is, perhaps people who are actively engaged in, BIM workflows are very familiar. To the client, they weren't. They didn't mean anything. So how is that then applied within the project information model? So we're going to look at the same facility. So in this case, the names actually match. And down here, we have the requirements. So we have here the actual facility. So if we look at the categories, we have everything grouped by its classification, by its category. We have the types, so for air terminals, diffusers, excuse me, there's 15 of them. And we'll see, sorry, apologies. There's a check column here. So we're getting a percentage when we're looking at those types through the categories. If I look in the actual requirements, which is trying to show, is we then see those requirements from the air. So the air is linked to the project information model. And then we see how many asset types it has picked up automatically. So now this is the reality is, although you might use the classification in Uniclass, you still end up with 140 out of, actually that's not going to tell me down there, out of the total number of, let's just go and check up here, types. So there's 311 different types. So that means roughly half of them, bit under half, ended up using a different classification. So they haven't matched perfectly. Is in our beta version, we now use the structure of the numbering to say to users, I've got a partial match. Are we in the right area? Do you want to use this as the requirements? Because trying to believe that people are always going to use exactly the correct classification is maybe slightly ambitious. The ambition ultimately is to use the air directly within the authoring tools, so you are directly using what the requirements are, not having to use things like the classification manager in Revit. If someone has produced the requirements, we should be giving it to people to use when they're actually producing the information. But we can go into that match and actually say, actually these should be, say I had more CO2 sensors. I can go into the, what's that one there? And I could go and pick available things that haven't been matched and add them in. I'm not going to do that live, and also this is a real project, so I don't want to mess someone's project up. The other example I wanted to show, go back to the home, is more recent, Higher Education Bundle 1, which are Technical Universities 6, Technical Universities. Now this is through a PFI style contract and delivery. The issue here was we could not get the company who are going to operate the buildings to make a decision about the asset information requirements at down to an actual asset type level. The best we could achieve, so we could get on with the project, was grouping them by risk rating from critical through to generic fabric. I think there was a level 7, which was, there isn't any, but there was no need to show that in this list. So here we're having to use the air to then apply that back into the PIM, where we actually have things classified. The other thing they provided was an extensive list of asset codes that they wished to actually have assigned. So the delivery team were required to put the facility manager's asset code against each of the asset types. So if we look within these, so for the critical, it still uses the COBie and says, for a critical item, we require the following information. Then within the PIM, if I look at one of the 6 projects and look at the requirements for the asset types, it then requires someone to go through and to match up. What they actually did was they put these codes in against each of the asset types. So we could then do a lookup and then assign, we still have 107 on this one, which may be the ones that are in GR07. but it meant that they could go through and find all the MEP specific, they could find all the critical, the MEP generic. I think what this did show when we went to review this project was there wasn't as much critical kit as the facility managers actually believed there was going to be. So the other thing that was done within this project is, if I go to the types, everything has been assigned its product from the product library. So you'll see there's a little picture for every single, if I go through to page 35, everything has an image and everything has quite rich information compared to what we might sometimes see from COBie delivery, say from the architects and maybe the electrical subcontractor. When we look at the product library tab, there is nothing to assign, everything has been assigned. This has been achieved because within the product library that they built for the projects, they included in the attributes the facility manager's asset code. So those were added in through the product library. So what we did is we divided up the information requirements through the different people, the players within the project team. So the right people were providing the information at various stages of the project developed. It was also the contractor being quite clever in terms of offloading that onto the actual subcontractors and the people who are doing the installation. So I go and look at the products.
Can I just stop you there for a second? So the key thing that's important there is that we're not asking the people that are producing the BIM models or the designs or even the installations in the model to put that information in. That can be done at a library level, and therefore it becomes reusable. And all of this we can make open. So this isn't closed to ActivePlan. We're making certainly the product library that can be open, and the information about classification, for example, and the information about how that then ties back into a CAFM system, that can be a collaborative effort, as it were, that we want to try and encourage people to consider. Sorry, Andrew.
That's all right. So the last thing I was going to show is here within the product library this is a product library for Irish educational projects. So there are sub-product libraries that work from the main one. There is still a check going on about the requirements. This is where that criticality rating falls down, is because we're not able to, as we would with Uniclass, say, at this work stage, these are the requirements. So if this was using that sort of more traditional, accurate approach, these would probably be saying 100%. But the fact they're not 100%, what happens is the information here, when it's added into here, gives us, apologies, too many tabs. If I look at the types, hopefully, oh, sorry, I need a category, don't I, to do it? Let's take those. We're seeing 100%. Because the information has been added through from the product library. So let's say there was 50% of it was here in the PIM, the product library was completed and this door closer was linked in, that other 50% has come from the product library. Hey presto, we have 100% where it matters in the PIM, in the project information model, ready to hand it over as the asset information model. So sometimes, that also can be a struggle trying to say to the teams, the fact it says 50% isn't a problem, that's good. When we add those two things together, we get 100%. So that's me. That's
good. Thank you, Andrew. Are there any? How does that relate to what you're doing, Lewis? Is there anything in there that you could contribute?
I just want to say one thing about the TFE, which is we have been asked recently to test the output for projects, and we discovered the DFE weren't actually testing the output that was being delivered to them. They had a weird bespoke COBie set of requirements. And when we actually went back and queried it, what became very apparent was they weren't even aware they'd actually asked for additional columns in some of the worksheets. So I think supports what some other people were saying about clients not necessarily being that well informed about their own requirements.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Lewis.
just on the back of what Andrew mentioned there. So the newer DFE requirements have a number of additional columns in each of the COBie sheets that is above that standard. A lot of the parameters in there, they're asking for exactly that. They're asking for everything across the board, every single COBie parameter they need really at handover. So pushing that in there and getting that in, like with the example of a boiler having the colour and the shape of it, it's just unnecessary within that data. It's pulling it through as a blanket statement. We've seen platforms very similar to ActivePlan being used to start driving this, the database linking through to that model. Obviously, we can get a certain element of data into that BIM model, but by the time we get to handover, a lot of that becomes obsolete. So we've seen platforms such as ActivePlan, such as eDocuments and Mortar being used to try and push that data from the supply chain back through into those models, or at least be able to link that data together from the databases into that model information. Because having this in the model files, it becomes unusable. It's very heavy, and the objects that are being used by the delivery teams don't always reflect what is being delivered on site as well.
That's really helpful. Yeah. I mean, just to say, Lewis, that we're working with Mortar and we're also working with eDocuments. So although it may understandably be perceived that we are doing the same thing, we're not quite doing the same thing. There's overlap. There's certainly stuff that Mortar is doing that we're doing, but vice versa. You know, there's things that we're not doing. So I think that's a really important point that you're making. At the end of the day, we want the most pragmatic way of the schools being able to use what's being handed over. I think that's the key thing.
Definitely, and it's trying not to lose that information as well. I think a lot of what the DFE need now is the information within their model files at each of those exchanges. It's changed from it being a handover deliverable to now an information exchange deliverable. So a lot of the data that's getting put into these models is lost when it gets through to handover and it moves on to the FM platforms. A lot of the work has to be redone because the information and the data can't be read effectively from what's being developed.
Okay, well that's an opportunity for us to discuss that, because that's something that we're able to do very easily. I think it's just a matter of doing things in a joined up way that people can understand. Because part of the difficulty, I think, is that people in the asset management world don't really understand BIM, and people in the design and delivery side of things don't really understand asset management and the complexity of asset management. I mean, a good example of that is doing maybe fire door inspections and things like that, fire stopping inspections and the like. Increasingly, people are checking CO2 levels in classrooms because of the air quality has an impact on learning. And all of these things are done using, normally there'd be a specialist come in to do that work. And they'll use a range of different software applications like Plan Radar and Riskbase and etc. for doing that. So what we're doing, we're taking that information and bringing it into a master asset information model so that it's all glued together. And then whatever software is being used to do, there is no standard FM system that is being used in schools. And in fact, a lot of schools don't have an FM system. They're doing it using spreadsheets. The other critical thing is that, you know, the O&M documentation, eDocuments, for example, they're very good. In my experience, I know the guys Lester and Jamie very well. They do a cracking job, but often their information isn't used after handover because it's not connected. Sorry,
George. A lot of what you're saying, and I know in other meetings, has been quite specific to individuals. Are you going to be doing one-to-ones with people from this group?
I think definitely if it's okay, Lewis, I'll definitely have a one-to-one with you, and I'm already talking to Andrew and Eleanor as well, from the weight side of things. I'm speaking with Paula Chandler on things, but
Yeah, of course.
if I'd be very interested in talking one-to-one on this, because this isn't about me trying to sell ActivePlan. I mean, clearly that's good if we can get some business out of it. But that's not my prime motivation. I've spent 20 years of my life working on schools to try and improve the quality of information that gets through on schools, and it's a bit of a passion of mine, to be honest. So with this, if anybody on the call wants to have a 15-minute one-to-one with me on it, then just put one-to-one in the chat, and we can set something up. Because I think the next step with this, it sounds as though there's a bit of a consensus that we want to try and have a collective feedback in a constructive way back to the department, to say, you're asking for these things, but actually nobody's using them. Yeah, or nobody's an extreme thing, but we want to do that. So if you want a one-to-one, put one-to-one in the chat, and we can move that forward.
Yeah, if you put one-to-one in the chat, and then Jis can pick those up, and we can get invites out to you to arrange the best dates. We'll probably do a Google poll or something. That's what we do, George, isn't it? With all the dates where people can fill in their own on the calendar what days they want to meet. That's probably best, isn't
it? Most definitely. I think the thing is here, what we want to do is not look at something specifically for schools, but what we want to do is look at things. We were talking this morning on the data center project, and BESA and SFG20 were on the call. And they're doing some really good stuff at the moment in mapping classifications. Well, making sure that Uniclass, NRM, SFG20, and other classifications are relatable. And I'm very interested in that. We've spent a lot of time working on that over the years. So what we want to try and do, a pump is a pump, wherever it's being used. So we should be able to collect information about an asset type and then start to map it back to products. The product library tool that Andrew was just talking about there, we're happy for anybody to use it. So we've got, I think we've got about 7,000 or 8,000 products in there at the moment, and obviously it's it's growing, so more people, especially with the Office for Product Safety and Standards coming out with a lot of things from their perspective. We've also got a group called Safety Critical Assets, by the way, if you weren't aware of it, that we met yesterday, and what we're going to be doing over the next month or so. There's different groups. There's people that are specialists in dampers and ventilation systems, and there's people that are specialists in sprinkler systems, and fire alarms and things like that, and also fire doors. So there's a group of specialists looking at the fire door side of things, and we've already got.
George, this is almost stream of consciousness.
Sorry, it is.
You've not finished a sentence for 5 minutes.
I'm sorry. I think probably.
Sorry, but
no, you're quite right to call me too. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's my.
No. I'm not saying it wasn't interesting, but the point is, when you do that, it's too much for somebody to take in.
I agree. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we've probably hit the hour. Is there anything anybody else is? Hello, Margaret.
Hi, I've just put something in the chat. I wasn't sure if you've got anyone here from Construction Industry Council, Construction Leadership Group, all those bodies that represent projects, project managers, our institution. As you know, I chair the Institution of Civil Engineers Health and Safety Expert Panel. We're booking you to come and speak to us. But, you know, are there people from the project world here? Or is it mainly, practitioners in asset management?
Oh no, there's people. Andrew is from Beaumont Kirkland, and Eleanor is from Waits, and Anna Matic. Is Anna still here? She's gone. I think.
She's just dropped off, actually.
Yeah, she's from Scott Brown Rig, and Bronwyn's from Tetra Tech. So we've got a wide group of people from the industry and
From the industry, but representing, you know what I mean?
construction.
Construction
well-
Industry Council, representing the construction industry leadership group, those people that put people to work in projects and make sure that they follow their contracts and follow the employers' requirements and that sort of thing.
I don't think we've got anybody at that heady level yet, Margaret. But
Okay.
I'm sure you can plug a few people in.
Yeah. Okay. All right. No problem.
Margaret's
you.
running a workshop, the thing she was talking about, but they've got a big event in September that's got Dame Judith Hackett speaking.
Yeah, I'll put the
so
link in the chat. Yeah.
That's a worthwhile thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry if I was going on there.
Sorry, I had to say something.
No, you're quite right. Absolutely. So, does everybody think is this worth carrying forward as a group? Yeah. Oh, Lewis is nodding. That's good.
Yeah, I definitely think it's worth carrying forward. I think some of the insights and some of the thoughts that have been raised are definitely worth further exploration and further discussion.
Brilliant. Okay.
Yeah, it's good actually to have a specifically schools group, won't it, George? We've not had that.
No. I think we're also doing one on healthcare.
Absolutely, yeah. But I'm just thinking I think it's a good idea. So anybody in here who's got colleagues or people they know who are working in the education or up and coming, up soon to be healthcare sector, plug them into us, get them along to the meeting or get hold of one of us, Gist or I, and let's get them on board and let's get them engaged. Let's get this one to grow.
I think the other thing, just to say to everybody, this is a big ocean to boil that we're involved with, and one of the challenges is that the schools are already inundated with requirements and the like, and we've got net zero, we've got the educational performance. There's health and safety, fire safety. There's a whole raft of things that they're wrestling with. And certainly I would think that school leadership are going to be a bit overwhelmed with all of the things that they're supposed to be doing. And also from our perspective, where we can help people like Lewis and Andrew and Eleanor is from an asset management point of view, we can then feed back to say, this is what is important, but really, I think more relevantly, what isn't important, so that we can scale back all this stuff that's being asked for, that quite frankly is probably confusing the hell out of the supply chain, because they're being asked to provide information and people will be discouraged if you're asked to produce some information and then nobody uses it and nobody's checking it, which is the point Andrew was making earlier, then that's even worse. Andrew.
I was just wondering, with what you just said, whether there's any value in sort of going back to first core principles, that as construction professionals, just as a very basic core set, you have 10 things per annum you have to try and stay abreast of. And it's just, everybody sharing the as you just said, the wide gamut of things that you're having to consider and take on board and deal with, which all feed into this. I think that's something that, I often get into conversation when we're working on projects with people saying, this is just a very small part. This is a big issue, big recurring comment about BIM in general with facility managers is this is being used to meet a very wide range of requirements, not just deliver the asset information. And it's that say from the RIBA, that core list of 10 things is a really good example of a framework of here's the breadth. I'm not saying it's exhaustive and it's perfect. How to end a conversation?
Okay.
I would just add to that as well what you said. There's a lot of confusion out there with the designers. I mean, Lewis probably knows about this as well, very well. Mixed messages and standardized way of formats of how data is presented, etc., etc. And again, it's standardizing this with the TAs on behalf of the DFE as well.
Okay, well, I think that's been a great meeting. Obviously, we are going to have to wind it up because we've got another one in 15 minutes.
Time for a spot of lunch then.
Right. Yeah, we're in a marathon session for 2 days we are. A great meeting, great to see you all. George, you've got a few meetings sort of lined up. We don't need to go into those now. And see you for the next one of these, which I think will probably be September. We'll be in touch before then, though. You'll get copies of the high points and a video link for the meeting. So we'll be in touch. See you then.
Good to talk to you. Have a good weekend.
Cheers.
Thank you,
everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for everybody attending as well. That's really, your time is valued. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.